Welcome to the 2019 Candidate Forum for the Waunakee Village Board. My name is Tim Kiefer and I will be the moderator for today's event. There are 6 candidates running for 3 seats on the Village Board, which means that the top 3 finishers will be elected. Election day is April 2nd, 2019. This forum is being professionally video recorded and will be uploaded to the internet on YouTube. Funding for the video recording was provided by Kiefer Law Office, which is my law firm. As a Waunakee business owner, I believe that the entire community benefits when voters are informed, so I am sponsoring the video recording as a service to our community. The video will be in the public domain, meaning that anyone who wishes to reproduce it, in whole or in part, is free to do so. I encourage everyone here in person today to help distribute the video of today's forum through social media so that voters can make their own decisions about how to cast their vote. As the moderator today, it is my goal to be fair and impartial. I have not endorsed any of the candidates, and I have not been involved with any of their campaigns. I am going to strictly enforce the time limits, which I will discuss in just a moment, and that is to ensure that everyone has an equal time to speak. We'll begin with 2-minute responses to the basic question. Please tell us a bit about yourself and tell us why you're running for Village Board. And after that, the questions will be from the audience. The responses to all of the questions will be limited to 2 minutes each. Our timekeeper is sitting right there. We'll hold up a sign when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. As I said previously, I will be strictly enforcing the time limits in order to be fair to everyone. Now, many audience members have already submitted questions. However, if you have a question you haven't submitted yet and you want to ask a question, please write it down, give it to me, and then I will read it to the candidates. It's not my intention to censor or limit the questions in any way. However, because each of the questions will be answered by all 6 candidates, please do not submit questions that are specific to any one individual. In addition, if questions submitted are very similar to each other, I may combine them into one question in order to save time. Now, I would like to mention that in addition to the Village Board election, there are 2 other local races on the ballot on April 2nd. In the Village of Waunakee, voters will be electing a village president, and residents of the Waunakee School District, which includes both the Village of Waunakee and surrounding communities, will be electing members of the Waunakee School Board. Immediately following the Village Board Forum, any candidate for Village President or School Board who is present here today will be given 2 minutes to make a campaign statement. And these statements will be video recorded along with the Village Board Forum and uploaded to YouTube. Both to save time and to be fair to everyone, I ask that you please refrain from applauding during the forum. However, after I've introduced all the candidates for Village Board, Village President, and School Board, I will ask that you applaud all the candidates together. And in alphabetical order, starting at my left, at the viewer's right, the following are the 6 candidates for Village Board: Mary Heimbecker, Gary Herzberg, Ann Lewandowski, Robert McPherson, Susan Springman, and Phil Willems. And now I will be reading the names of the candidates for Village President and for School Board. As I said earlier, these candidates will be giving 2-minute campaign statements immediately following the Village Board Forum. For Waunakee Village President, there is one name on the ballot, which is incumbent Village President Chris Zellner. He is unfortunately not able to attend today. There is also a write-in candidate for Village President, Frank Bergman, who is here today and who will give a 2-minute statement at the end of the Village Board Forum. For Waunakee School Board, there are 2 candidates on the ballot to fill 2 school board seats representing the Village of Waunakee on the school board. Those candidates are Dave Beckshire and Jack Heineman, and they are both here today, and they will be able to give 2-minute statements at the end of the forum. In addition, there is a write-in candidate, Brian Hofer, who is not here today. Also for Waunakee School Board, for the school board seat representing the towns of Dane and Springfield, no one registered to actually be on the ballot. That seat will therefore be filled by whoever gets the most write-in votes. The 2 write-in candidates for that seat are James Minguth, who is here today, and Judith Engbertson, who I believe will be arriving at some point, and will be giving a 2-minute statement at the end of the forum. I should mention with regard to the school board that members of the school board do represent different geographic areas of the school district, in this case the village of Waunakee and the towns of Dane and Springfield, but every voter can vote for all of the board members up for election regardless of where in the school district the voter lives. In other words, voters in the village of Waunakee will also be voting for the Springfield-Dane school board seat. Now, being an elected office myself on the Dane County Board, I know that it can be a thankless job, but democracy only works if people are willing to run and willing to serve. And what these candidates are doing by running for elected office is so important for our democracy. So, to thank each one of you, I have boxes of Thanks a Lot Girl Scout cookies. Could you please pass them down?
Thank you, Tim. That's really kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, we got them all. And these Girl Scout cookies have stamped on them the words thank you in 5 different languages. So if you are ever feeling that local government is a thankless job, which I will say sometimes on county board I feel that way, just eat one of these Thanks a Lot Girl Scout cookies and hopefully you'll feel better and you will remember how thankful we all are that you, everyone here at this table, took the time to run for office. And with that, you sort of applaud, all right, but if we could get a big round of applause for all our candidates. And now we'll start with the questions for the village board candidates. As I said, 2-minute responses. And for the first question, we're going to start to my left and go down the row, starting with Mary Heimbecker. And then for subsequent questions, we're going to alternate who answers first, again, going down the row. The first question is one that I wrote, and then after that, there'll be the questions from the audience. And the first question is, please tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us why are you running for village board? And start with Mary Heimbecker. Of course, yeah, please use the microphones.
My name is Mary Heimbecker. I have lived in Waunakee area my entire life, graduating in 1977 from the Waunakee School District. Moving to the village in 1979 when my family sold our family farm. I'm running to have more transparency in our village government. I'd like to see more attainable housing for all income levels here in town, continued business growth, and just accessibility for all. Thank you.
Okay, Gary Herzberg next.
Hi, I'm Gary Hertzberg. I'm originally from Columbus, Wisconsin, moved to Waunakee in 1996. Married to my wife, Jean. I have 2 children that are, hopefully the last one's graduating college this year. The other one has moved out to Boston. Been involved in Waunakee since I moved here in 96. Got involved in village politics, I guess, originally when we had some issues with a neighborhood park that we wanted to build, and we got involved with that, and a year later I was put on the Parks Committee, and from that a number of friends had me run for the village board, which I lost my original race, then appointed to the village board, I think the following year. I've been on the village board up until last year for 17 years. During that time, I think I spent 15 years on the library board, probably 7 or 8 or 9 years on the budget committee, the planning commission, public works, cable committee, just a various number of the committees throughout the community. I volunteered as a youth football coach for 5 or 6 years, a youth lacrosse coach for 5 or 6 years, have done volunteer projects at Heritage School, at the high school itself, on doing some field work for them. I originally put in the Bulls Conservancy. I volunteer at Schumacher Farm. I've done a number of projects there. I love Waunakee, and I think it's just a great community. When I lost the election last year, people came back and said, hey, we want you back on the village board. We like your passion, what you do, and your involvement, so that's why I'm running again. Thanks.
And next we have Ann Lewandowski.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Tim for volunteering and donating the recording services. I think that's a huge benefit to the community. One of the things that I feel very strongly about is democracy, which is one of the reasons why I stood up. My family has been in America for a very long time, came over with the Mayflower, and so I definitely feel very strongly that democracy is a core value. I do not have the extensive resume that Gary Hertzberg had. I moved to the village in 2015 with my husband. We don't have any children, but that was definitely, the great school district was one of the things that attracted us here. We're definitely very typical for our age cohort that we're delaying childbearing a little bit. So finding ways to involve people who might not have kids yet are definitely something that I feel very passionately about, expanding that demographic and that interest for the village. Some of my work history is I work at the Rural Wisconsin Health Cooperative, which is a cooperative of 40 hospitals across the state, and we're very committed to enhancing rural life, which is one of the reasons why we moved to Waunakee. Was we felt like it was a really good balance for me and my interest in rural areas and my husband's interest in working in Madison. I have experience with Six Sigma, which is a process change methodology. And really that's where I feel like I have a lot of value that I can bring to the board, because what that teaches you is how to engage change with people. And typically what we learn from people is the best way to start change is to engage the people who will be impacted by that change first. You don't come in with top-down change that says, hey, this is our new biggest, best thing. Really what you want to ask people is, what change do you want to see and what do you value? And these are our needs. How do we best get there? And I think that's really an important...
You can finish your sentence.
I think that's a really important value that we need on the board.
Thank you. And now Robert McPherson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert McPherson. I moved to Waunakee about 5 years ago now. I moved here like many other people who probably moved here recently. Great schools, wanted to start a family here. I wasn't yet married at the time, but I got married shortly after I moved here. But, you know, when I moved here, one of the first things I noticed when I moved here was, unless you're at a certain income bracket, Waunakee is not for you. And, you know, at the time I didn't really think much about it, but when the village decided that it was time to hold a housing task force to start addressing the issues about affordable housing in Waunakee, you know, I spent probably way too much time researching the history of housing being built in Waunakee, and I realized a disturbing trend, which was there wasn't much unless you, again, were in the upper middle income bracket. Now, unlike Ann, I do have a child at this point because, you know, Ann and I were slightly different in that, you know, I guess I say almost said unfortunately for my wife. She went to school for 20 years, so she could afford to buy a house in one of the newer neighborhoods in Waunakee, and there was a lot of choice for her. And you know, that's not right. It locks out a lot of people from a great school district. We lose when we're not diverse, both economically, racially, or even, you know, pick your socioeconomic factor that's influenced by income. We lose as a village. So I made the decision around the end of the year that I wanted to run because, you know, there was a real lack of concerted effort from the village boards, in my opinion, to increase diversity, to increase affordable housing. Our businesses can't find employees. We have no mass transit. Our seniors are consistently being priced out of their rents. It's getting to a point that unless we take something and get some new ideas on the board, nothing is going to change. People are just going to start leaving Waunakee, and we're going to be stuck with kind of a walled garden that we've created. So, thank you.
And next from Susan Springman.
I've been in Waunakee for 24 years. I grew up in this Dane County area, lived here my whole life, but for 5 years where I lived in New Berlin. And that was a huge eye-opener for me to actually not live in this area for a period of time. What I learned is if you live in one place your whole life, you really don't see the whole world. You miss understanding what you have going for you. And I really realized that when I came back here, what a great community this is and how lucky we all are. I want to run for the village board because I love this community and I like to give back to it. And I feel that my background is very useful to the village board and to the village staff. I have a unique experience in the legislature. I worked on a Senate subcommittee on small business, and what we did is we looked at how public policy did or did not intersect well and what needed to be done to help the economy with small business people. I worked for a mayor. I understand urban issues. I worked for a governor. I ran the real estate for the state of Wisconsin and also the Capitol Police and was there when 911 happened. And I know security issues. I understand a lot about how state finance works and how it trickles down or doesn't trickle down to us at the local level. I've worked in the legislative, the state, and the city level, and I've been on the village board since 2005. Yes, I'm an old-time incumbent, and I'm proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's helpful, but you know, new blood is always good too, and I encourage other people to run. I've also worked in the private sector. In real estate, I have my own company. I understand how projects are put together, what is realistic, what is feasible. And in downtown revitalization, that's been my passion. And I think we've done a great job in this downtown. If you weren't here 10 years ago, you would know what it was and how great it is today.
Thank you. And finally, Phil Willems.
I get my own.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill Willems, right. I came to Waunakee in 1975. In 1977, Betty and I opened the Ben Franklin. We raised 3 children. They've all gone on to bigger and better things and moved away from Waunakee. Not that they wouldn't like to be back, but their jobs take them somewhere else. Along the way, I was able to volunteer as a coach in soccer, basketball. In fact, I taught Chris Elner how to shoot a jump shot. A lot of other young men too. Betty was also very active. I worked 16 years with these folks in EMS, and I'm famous for being listed special in every one of these pictures as missing from picture. The store always took precedent when some of this stuff happened, but along the way I was able to answer over 800 ambulance calls, and I really like working with people. So when we closed our store in 2002, I decided to look around and start doing some more stuff. So after we successfully opened 4 Culver's restaurants, well, I only have 1/3 of each of them, but while we got those open and going, I would look for new challenges, and the village board is that for me. I like doing this.
All right, thank you. The next question, Gary Herzberg, you'll be the first person to answer, then we'll go down the row, and then Mary, you'll be the last, and then we'll keep rotating like that. And the next question is, again, 2-minute answers. Thanks for everyone for following the time limits, appreciate it. How would you improve transportation options in Waunakee?
Transportation options, I think, gosh, going back 15 years, we've talked about, I think at one point we were talking with, Madison Metro. How would you ever get bus service out to Waunakee? That discussion has never gone very far. It gets related to cost and how do you fund that? How do you get enough mass in Waunakee and enough demand to justify Madison Metro service or a private service that would be a transportation option for those people that live in Waunakee or those people that live maybe on the north side of Madison or the west side of Madison and work at one of our employers. So, I think discussion about rideshare might be something that might be appropriate at some time, but a funding source, again, maybe there's some Dane County funding available to assist us on that. But that's always been a challenge for our area out here. Thanks.
And next to answer, Ann Lewandowski, how would you improve transportation options in Waunakee?
So, being a young person, I believe that there are multiple transportation options, not just cars. So one of the things that I think is really important to think about is, as we're putting in new developments, making sure that there are sidewalks for people to walk. I think that that's a very basic and important value that I have. Secondly, our comprehensive plan talks about creating transit supporting density. And I actually asked our village engineer in September what the density of my neighborhood was, because I was curious. I live right next to the train tracks. Is that even something that would happen? And I was a little bit concerned when I heard that density is not actually something we track. And so I think transportation, when you don't know what you're aiming for in terms of a goal for housing policy, is going to be really difficult to implement. So my first answer in terms of diversifying and creating public transportation is understanding what our current density is in various neighborhoods and how much farther we need to enhance that in order to create transit supporting density. I also think we need to ask the people of Waunakee if that's something they want to prioritize in terms of identifying routes, funding, and all of that. Because if there's not a political will by the people who pay the bill, then that's not really something that we need to explore, as much as I might personally really want that. So finally, I think that there is also the ability, I know that we're hooking in along the Governor Nelson with bikes, and I think that's a fantastic effort, and I think that we should really prioritize making sure that our bike routes are adequate for people who want to use that option. Thank you.
And next we have Robert McPherson.
So when we go through and talk about issues at the Housing Task Force, inevitably it always goes back to transportation. And the reason that it goes back to transportation is because when we talk about bringing in affordable housing and kind of touching on the density issue that Ann brought up, the question is always, well, a lot of these people maybe don't necessarily have the ability to own a car, or maybe they're at an age where they don't want to own a car. And the conversation stops at that point because everyone says, well, there's no buses that serve Waunakee, so the conversation's over. Now, the reality is that there is money out there that you can apply for from the state to do studies on on transportation and mass transit, specifically for mass transit. There's nothing really out there that stops us from applying for that other than we haven't taken those steps to apply for it. There's also nothing that stops us from working with neighboring municipalities. If we're having trouble meeting a critical mass of enough people to get on the bus, why aren't we speaking with our neighboring municipalities that are successfully working with the metro area transit authorities? There's nothing, again, that really stops us from doing that other than we haven't really expressed our political will to do it. The best way really to go about addressing this, though, is we should be exploring all options. We shouldn't be ignoring the fact that there are options out there and claiming, well, it's too hard for us. It's government. I mean, as was stated at the beginning, this is a thankless job. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But we need to go in there and we need to take every approach that we can when it comes to transit options. I also agree that there are other choices out there. There are ride shares. We definitely should be promoting. I don't think might is the correct word. I think we should be doing that. And then as far as bike paths and things like that, also, as somebody who bikes into Madison quite frequently, it's terrifying to ride down, M and Q and things like that until I get down to the Conservancy areas or the bike path that runs along the highway. So definitely, if it's out there as more option, more people will use it.
And next we have Susan Springman.
So transportation is always a big issue, and I agree that one of the reasons that well, no, let me say first, it's not true we haven't talked about it. It's been talked about a lot by our staff. They do look at funding. They do look at options. I was on a transportation planning countywide committee. We looked at it. The issue is funding. Where is the money going to come from? Even Madison doesn't have the money. What we need is a regional transit authority, which is countywide, which needs a funding source, which we have not been able to get through the legislature. Maybe now with a new governor, we might be more successful. And with that, we could, the outlying communities might be able to link into Madison Metro, which is the only bus company around. Sun Prairie is going to just start, and they're going to pay for one run into Madison one way. But let's think about this. Everybody who lives and works in Waunakee works all over the place. They don't work in one spot. So that's a challenge. How many buses do you get on how many routes to travel to how many locations? You know, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to be realistic. It's a real issue as to how you do it efficiently in this community. One thing we have done is we have promoted sidewalks. We have sidewalks. We're adding sidewalks wherever we add roads. And we have added bike paths all over this community within the areas that we have control over. And we have talked to Westport and we've talked to the county. Thank you, Tim. I mean, we are on that issue and have been for many, many years. I think rideshare is going to be an option because you can have fewer riders in a vehicle versus, you know, are we going to have 20 people at a bus stop to go to the same place? It would be good to do some studies over time, and I think that we could do that, and it's something that could be on our agenda. But again, without a funding mechanism for mass transit, I don't see people wanting to raise our property taxes enough.
And finally, Phil Willems. Or not finally, Mary's going to go second finally.
Well, I haven't got the foggiest idea how to solve that problem. I know that this mass transit from a city like Waunakee is very difficult to address. Whatever we do, if we do it, it's going to have to be heavily subsidized. It's going to be expensive per ride. We've tried it before back in the 80s, back when the Village Hall was part of the library, the senior center, and the fire department all in that building where the fire department is, and it was much smaller then, but it was all there. I worry about this transit into Madison because I'm part of a network of about 40 people who take seniors to their doctor's appointments and etc. We also have, from our senior services, we have twice weekly little bus trips where we take people shopping and to recreational things. They're very lightly used. Our people like the mobility of using their own vehicle, so I think that even though we think that they all want to ride a bus, I think you might want to talk to them a little bit before you ask them whether or not they want to pay for the bus. Thank you.
And now Mary Heimbecker.
I'd like to see us invest in park and rides in areas of town where people could take their car to a park and ride, get on a city bus, and take it to a transportation area where the routes divide out into other routes then into Madison. More bike paths, and I know we have several, making sure that we have sidewalks in all the areas. There's also available state van pools and ride shares that are currently available that people could look into. That's where a park and ride would be really nice because people could park there and hit the van pool and go to downtown. I would like to also see looking at the cost for a minibus around town, especially for areas for students outside of the 1.75 mile routes that are available. On Nextdoor, there was a lot of talk about why there isn't so much for students outside of the 1.75. At least then parents, if they wanted to, instead of taking their kids to school, they could pay to have their children ride a smaller bus to the schools, and that would help save on some of the congestions to our schools and back home again in the afternoon, or if the kids don't have their parents to pick them up, they wouldn't have to walk that far. Thank you.
For the next question, Ann Lewandowski will be the first one to answer, then we'll go down the row as we did before. And what I did was I got two questions on the subject of housing, and so I'm going to combine them into one question to save time. And this question goes as follows. Does the village need the large homes costing $400,000 and above with all the amenities for the property tax revenue? Can we build modest homes for workers to invest in? And, combining the questions, what is one specific thing you have done or will do on the board to ensure that there is affordable housing in the district for Waunakee Community School District staff? And since it's kind of a long, complicated question, I'm going to ask it. I'm going to read it one more time, which is, does the village need the large homes costing $400,000 and above with all the amenities for the property tax revenue? Can we build modest homes for workers to invest in? And what is one specific thing you have done or will do to ensure there is affordable housing in the district for Waunakee Community School District staff? And starting with Ann Lewandowski.
So I agree that that's probably a great question to combine, because I think the answer is both very simple and probably pretty complicated. I've definitely heard a lot of people have strong feelings about the $400,000 homes. And certainly, I appreciate that they're out there paying property taxes. But I think that when we are building new developments, it's really important to have a range of housing options, including those that would be accommodating to somebody, and specifically a single somebody on a teacher's salary, which is about $40,000 a year to start. Which, if you do some easy math, times 3, we're looking at like $150,000. We're not building homes for that person right now, and even really finding an existing home in the village is really tough. So one of the things we heard at the Housing Task Force last Thursday, I was in attendance, I'm not on the Housing Task Force, but certainly one of the things that our experts told us was that really large lot sizes drive people to build bigger homes because they've invested so much in that land that having that cost be so high, they want to get as much return on investment as possible, which means building a larger, more expensive home. Makes a lot of sense. So I would look really strongly at our village zoning code and identifying ways to reduce that overall lot size and need so that we can incentivize smaller homes with a market solution. Thank you.
Robert McPherson.
So this is a topic that's very near and dear to me. For a living, I work at a bank that heavily does mortgages. Now, I'm not a salesperson. I work in compliance, so I'm often the business prevention department as far as our CFO is concerned. But home financing, for what I do, working in, I'm a fair lending officer. And a lot of what we do in fair lending is we look at availability, of a product to certain individuals. And, how that translates to this question is that you see that when you're dealing with house sizes that are large, you're dealing with expensive land, and you're dealing with people trying to maximize their investment, as Ann just said, you're going to fall in these situations where it seems like the only thing you see out there is a house that pushes the limits of size. Now, it's kind of concerning when you see that as a trend, because house sizes by population are getting smaller. So you would think if less population of family, you'd need a smaller house size. But apparently the demand is there. So how do we address that problem, and is it important to the tax roll? Yeah, it's kind of important to the tax roll. I mean, any property tax is important to the tax roll. But for addressing it, especially for an issue for teachers, I'm a firm believer in what are called community seconds. These are silent second mortgages, so to speak. They're down payments that people who work in specific community roles, like teachers, police, EMS, things of that nature, they can get to help with the down payment on houses. Now, that's only one half of the solution, obviously. You have a silent second out there. Okay, well, how are they still going to afford that $400,000 house? And actually, to be honest, I think the median is $479 in Waunakee. It's not. You need government intervention at that point. You need someone at a board level who's putting the brakes on developers and saying, wait a minute, our comprehensive plan says we need a mix of houses in the neighborhood, especially if you have a PUD, which means that you can play with your zoning a little bit. You really should be putting in some smaller lot sizes to encourage some smaller houses. You're still going to make your money. You're still going to sell all your land. You're still going to develop your houses. But, there has to be some control from the government.
And now, Susan Springman.
So what's interesting is when Savannah Village was built, those were small lot sizes, and they were meant for people to build small houses on. What happened? They built big houses on it. And those were affordable lots. So it is what the market demanded and wanted at the time. So that's what happened, and that was the intent of that particular development. I have worked for developers and built, managed housing for many, many years. So I know what the cost is. I know what it takes to make them work financially. I'm a director on the bank board. I understand how you finance stuff. A lot of it is a simple cost issue. Affordability is an issue all over this country. It is not unique to Waunakee. The problems we have here are all over the country. I am glad we are looking at it. There aren't any magic bullets in it. There are some programs out there like Section 42 and some other types of tax credit and funding mechanisms that would allow us to build some less expensive multifamily for people within a certain income bracket. And I think that is something we have never turned anybody away if they came here and wanted to do it. Actually, there was a developer who came and wanted to build one downtown years ago on Main Street, and that project was turned down. This community has kind of a conflicted opinion about whether they want apartments or they want affordability. I'm glad we have the committee. I think we need to do some more surveys, and I guess there is a survey underway to find out what the community wants. But you can't dictate that a developer build a lower cost or low-income housing because it's against state statute. It's against the law. It's been tried, but it's been shot down legally. So you have to find a funding mechanism, and it takes a creative person to put it together. Not everybody's capable of doing it. There's only so many people who even do tax credit deals because it's kind of a brain-dead exercise. It's very difficult, but you can do it. And there are people out there. We could invite people to come here and do that as well. It might come out of the housing study.
And next is Phil Willems.
I don't have a problem with a guy and couples, let's say, building $1 million house in Waunakee. As long as they're still only sending 1.5 kids to school, that's perfect with me. I mean, they pay more taxes. That's fine. I like that. As far as being able to provide for a teacher, I did room and board for one, and she moved out when she got her job teaching. She's teaching right now. She's living in a quite nice home, probably a little nicer than the one she was raised in. She and her husband both work. They make it happen. My wife and I both work. We made it happen. We live in a neighborhood where lots of teachers live. So I think teachers can live a lot of places in Waunakee. They maybe can't live in a $500,000 home, but then again, they could live in a home like I live in. So I really don't see that much of a problem for a teacher or a married teacher to live in Waunakee. You don't have to live in the best house, any of you.
And next we have Mary Heimbecker.
I think we need a mixture of homes and developments with from single family to duplexes, fourplexes, and smaller homes, and some apartments in all new developments, not just housing or large housing or small housing, but a mixture of housing so that one development does not instill a connotation that it's this or that, but there's a mixture. I think that all new development is good. It brings in new tax revenues for our EMS, our roads, our schools, and everything. And there are, learning from the housing task force that I'm on, there's many different grants that are available for housing that would be attainable for teachers or our police or EMS folks. And we are not using or utilizing that information at this time. So I would like the village to look into that also. Thank you.
And the final answer on this question will be with Gary Herzberg.
Workforce or affordable housing. I think the task force that Waunakee's formed, I think, is a great idea. Hopefully some good ideas come out of that for the village board to consider. I think it's a task force because sometimes we create committees, we get an answer, and then the committee goes away. I think this is an ongoing issue. It's something that's a committee that, you know, if we get an answer, we should still have them meet 4 times a year to continue to explore the different options. Housing's tough. It's market driven. You can't, I've heard of people that in communities that have tried to do this and get developers to commit to a low land price for lots. The people think that's great, and 2 years later, they build a home on it, and 2 years later, because people want to live in that area, they flip the house, and now instead of being a $300,000 house, it's a $370,000 house because they made a bunch of money because the prices were low. So everything we deal with ends up being market driven. I think different options of duplex, different housing options. Waunakee's rental rates are comparable with the surrounding communities. So we do have rental properties that seem to be in line with the surrounding communities, so that's an option. For single-family housing, that's a difficult one for us to deal with. I get concerned. I looked at the State Journal today. There's big articles in there today. We got 2 neighboring communities. Sun Prairie's got a $165,000 or $165 million referendum. DeForest has a $140 million referendum for schools. And one of the quotes from DeForest was, yeah, we just exploded in population. We've exceeded our projections every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And if you looked at those communities, they might have overbuilt.
Thank you. The next question, and with this one we'll be starting with Robert McPherson and going down the row. This was submitted by the audience. And it starts with a hashtag, so if you're on Twitter, I guess you could look it up on Twitter. It starts with hashtag ready for 100%. And the question reads as follows. Monona, Middleton, Eau Claire, and Madison have committed to 100% renewable electricity community-wide by 2040. And these communities have also committed to having all energy sectors, including heat and transportation, to be 100% renewable by 2050. So would you be willing to support this initiative in Waunakee? And just to summarize it again, they're committing to 100% renewable electricity by 2040 community-wide, and all energy, including heat and transportation, by 2050, and that's called hashtag ready for 100%, question from the audience. So starting with Robert McPherson, 2-minute responses.
So before I answer the question, I did want to use a little bit of my time just to follow up on some statements from the previous question, because I think that it's important that we touch on it very quickly. I would urge those who believe that you can't tell a developer what to do to look what the city of Middleton has done in recent years with their housing projects. Those housing projects, the city did dictate to the developers about having what type, having low-income housing available, because that was a part of the low-income housing tax credit process that they had to go through to build those properties. And part of that also deals with flipping those properties. You can't flip those properties. It's forbidden by law. That's how it works. So just wanted to throw that out there before I address the energy question. Energy question is an interesting one. We have a lot of houses around here that, there are some people that are under the impression that they can't do renewable energy on their house. The village hasn't really taken much of a stance on renewable energy. I think that's, at least not that I have seen, I should say. That's probably not a true statement. But I think that setting a 30-year timeline, a 30-year timeline to move all energy to renewable and a 20-year timeline to move electricity to renewable, I think that that's something that we should be exploring through our utility. I believe that the utility already has taken some steps to offer users the ability to purchase renewable energy, and it's going to be inevitable. I've seen that there's solar farms being built in the state of Wisconsin that are going to provide more solar energy choices to those that live, outside there. It's some of the farmers that just aren't making any money anymore decided they'd rather have a solar farm rather than, grow feed corn. So I think that it's definitely attainable, and I think that if I was elected to the board, that's definitely something that I would not turn away. I mean, renewable energy is the future. We do have a finite amount of resources, and yes, I do believe that climate change is real.
Next is Susan Springman.
I don't think anybody would argue against renewable energy or trying to attain a certain percentage. I'd certainly like to know more details on it and what it would entail. I know that what's been done in these other communities are doing it in their public facilities, and they know what their capital budget is going to be to attain it, what their payback, et cetera, and that would require a study here as well. So this is, of course, something, why would you oppose it? We do have a utility. It's not just controlled by Waunakee, and that utility has been involved in some of these issues, and we should hear more about that. One last thing on the housing, though. You can dictate when you subsidize them and you give them help or they get some sort of assistance, and so that's the caveat.
Sure, I would support 100% renewable energy by 2040, etc. Easy statement. Haven't got the foggiest idea how to do it again. But if I can call up my son, he can help me out a whole lot. I think it's going to be possible. I think it's kind of pie in the sky to do it way too soon because there's some drawbacks. In fact, I spent the weekend in Michigan at a home where the guy has a heat pump. And I think that's the neatest thing in the world. So he's got a heat pump, but it's failing a lot, so he's also installed a gas backup. We're just so far from getting there yet. I don't know when we can say it's attainable, but yes, I'd like to be part of it if it gets here.
And next on this question is Mary Heimbecker.
I would support renewable energy. Again, how to get there. Some of my ideas would be to have newer homes, or any home that would wanted to have solar panels put on them. There's also new development for some of our public buildings to have those be using renewable energy such as solar, and also geothermal would be an option for some of our bigger buildings and newer buildings in town. Thank you.
And Gary Herzberg.
The last 3 years before I retired again, I worked for a heating and air conditioning distributor. I learned a lot about different options and geothermal, and I think that the technology is there. So much of it, geothermal was a great buy. It was a great option for people up until about a year and a half ago when they stopped the tax credits. And then there's no way you could ever cost justify it. You could feel good about putting it in, but you could never cost justify it. So all of these options, I think, it'd be great. I mean, I would support this goal. I think it's a great idea. I think that technology has a long way to come. If you look at solar should be a great option that we put on our community buildings. There was an article in the paper the other day about Madison that most of their community buildings have solar as one of their options. Charging stations. I know when I was on the library board, we talked about the idea of putting charging stations at the new library. The one thing we're fortunate, Waunakee Utilities, and we have a great resource here. There's a lot of bright people that run our utilities. We're very fortunate as a community to have it. It saves us money, and we have a resource that I know today is looking into these options for us. I definitely think that's a goal we should look at. It's just going to be difficult to get there.
And next, Ann Lewandowski.
I wasn't sure if our timer was trying to cut Gary off a little early.
Gary, did you finish what you wanted to say? Okay, fair enough.
So actually, personally, I have already taken this pledge. The Waunakee Utilities is fantastic in that our home is not really designed for solar. It's 100 years old. So unfortunately, when we looked at doing personal solar, it wasn't really a great option for us given the size of the array that we would need to build. However, I definitely do spend extra money every month buying solar tax credit, or solar, not tax credits, but units from the Waunakee utility, because I do feel very strongly that finding ways to offset my carbon footprint is really important. I do like that the Waunakee utility is an optional program and that it's not mandatory, because that way if you are on a lower income budget or on a fixed income, it's not required. but as somebody that feels like that's an important step to take, I can take that. 20 years is a long time, and there have been very interesting opportunities for innovation and technology. There was a really cool solar Ivy program that came out that caught both wind and solar. Unfortunately, that's gone out of business. So I would support creating a program as long as it made sense for everybody in Waunakee. And I do believe we will eventually get there. And so I would encourage everybody to look at how those options are. And I would also say that our current zoning code does allow off-site solar utility installation on your lot, assuming you're not in a development where the covenants prohibit that. Thank you.
Okay, and that's the last answer to that question. Before we move on to the next question, I asked the videographer, you okay, do you need to change out your tape or whatever?
That would be a good time.
Okay, we'll keep going. So on this question, we're going to start with Susan Springman and then going down the row as we did before. And oh, now would be a good time. Oh, okay, I misunderstood you. Okay, so we're going to...
Family, I say one thing.
Okay, sorry about that. I did not understand. I did not understand you well. So we'll just take a... Actually, before we take a moment break, I'm just going to read the questions. You guys can think about it. And then we'll take a very brief break. And like I said, these questions are coming straight from the audience. I'm just reading it verbatim as it was written on the piece of paper that was given to me, which is, who would you endorse as our next village president and why? That's going to be the next question, and that will start with Susan Springman as soon as the videographer changes out his tape. Yes. Okay. So next question, starting with Susan Springman. Question from the audience. Who would you endorse as our next village president and why?
I would endorse Chris Zellner. I know Chris personally because I have worked with him on the board for a long time. He filled out his paperwork, he got his nomination papers in, he's been out in the community. He does more than he has to as village president. He has started a number of events in this community, gone out and raised dollars, put on events and activities for this community that he did not have to do as village president. He cares about this community deeply, and he spends, I don't know how many hours every week on village business. He is at meetings all of the time. I know he cares. All of us care. Anybody who runs for village board, you don't do it because there's any gain out of it personally or professionally or monetary. You do it because you care. And none of us take any actions that would hurt this village. At least we don't, when we take those actions, we take them with that in mind. We care about this community, and Chris totally cares about this community.
And next, Phil Willems.
I also would support Chris Zellner. I've known Chris since he was a young fellow. He's always been honest and upright with me and polite. And I'd say that for all the people that I've worked with on all the boards over the years. I've never been on a board with anyone that had a private agenda for themselves. It was all for Waunakee, and that's what makes it nice. And I think Chris is also very open with people. He's always letting people get their voice into the action. He's always letting them be heard. And I like the fact that he tries to bring neat things to Waunakee. Lots of good recreation. And I like his Wannaboom. Great addition. Thank you.
And next answer will be from Mary Heimbecker.
I actually haven't decided who I would vote for yet. Oh, sorry. I actually haven't decided who I would vote for yet. Chris sure has done some good things for Waunakee, Wannaboom, etc. But then at the same time, I've been to almost every single board meeting this past year and plan commission meeting, and at the end of some of those, he has totally chastised people for coming out and speaking to the board and just telling people that they are not doing some of the right things. And I think a village board president needs to listen to the people. I'm still learning more about Frank. He's come up with some ideas, but then some of the things he said I don't also agree with. So I really haven't decided who I would vote for at this time. Thank you.
And next, Gary Hersberg.
I've worked with 4, I believe, village presidents over the year, and John Lobmeyer was someone I really looked up to, and I thought, my gosh, I'd never meet someone who would work as hard. And I would say that Chris Zellner, and I didn't think I'd say that when Chris took the position, even though I had worked with him on the board, Chris's dedication and passion for the community of Waunakee is just outstanding. I mean, strong family values. He cares more about this community and the people that live here. You know, this Wannaboom's idea that he came up with, when he told me about it, I kind of chuckled with him a little bit, and I said, "You think that would really work?" And he didn't stop at that. He took that as a challenge, and he's very driven and focused, highest integrity. So I would support Chris Zellner because I think he cares not only about Waunakee, but about the people who live here, and he cares to continue to make this town great.
And now, Ann Lewandowski.
This is a very uncomfortable question for me. I don't ever want to speak negatively of anyone, but I think I need to be honest. I would not endorse either of the candidates for village board. I was very concerned at the last forum we had of some of the comments made by Mr. Bergman about being a religious community. I very strongly believe in our Constitution and a division between church and state. Like Mary, I have also attended many of the Village Planning Commission and Village Trustee meetings. As Mary said, I have also been on the receiving end of that chastisement for speaking my mind as a tax-paying resident. We've heard a lot about Wannaboom today, and that is a fantastic community event. That committee is not listed anywhere on our website, and you cannot apply to be there. Furthermore, I had applied to be on several committees and commissions last year. I had applied to be on the Parks and Recreation Committee, and when Chris Zellner had interviewed me about that, the litmus test was, how do you feel about a specific developer? And I felt like that was unethical and a very inappropriate question to be asking, because I didn't have any strong feelings about that person. And when I was brought up that this person does such great things for the village, I said, yes, that's true, but he also has a commitment to his bottom line. And having a great village is in his best interest. I will say I was not put on the committee. So thank you.
And now, Robert McPherson.
It's going to sound exactly like I'm copying Ann a bit here, but I also would not endorse anyone. Vastly different reasons, obviously. You know, not enough information between the two at this point. I haven't seen the two of them actually speak at a forum yet. I was kind of hoping I was going to see that today, but you know, her scheduling didn't work and didn't happen at the last forum. So I guess I'll find out, like everybody else, at the next candidate forum that's going to be hosted by the Chamber and Tribune. But you know, as to why, it's pretty simple. I mean, with Mr. Bergman, I will be honest, you know, the religious comment stung a little bit to hear that from a political candidate. Also, I didn't agree with his position on liquor licenses and saying that we were going to revoke liquor licenses from gas stations and not have it on Main Street. That's frankly disturbing to me. We went through this in the 20s. We have an amendment to the Constitution that addresses issues like this. And I don't feel that liquor is an issue in the village as far as our business community goes. As for Mr. Zellner, well, I've gone to some housing task force meetings with him. I've watched the meetings on YouTube. I've seen how he comports himself. I've heard his discussions and how he treats certain people in the community. I don't agree with that. I think that sometimes he shows more favor to people who don't even live in the community, which can also be a bit disturbing as well as somebody who does pay taxes to the community. So, you know, asking for an endorsement at this point, not out of me, you wouldn't get that out of me, but I think that everybody deserves at least to hear a little bit more information and at least hear the candidates side by side instead of just a one-sided story where we have a write-in who is trying his best to get his message out there and a village president that simply says, look at my record. Okay, well, the past is prologue. What's he going to do for the future? I don't know what that is, and as a voter, I don't feel informed enough to make an endorsement.
Thank you. And that concludes the answers for that question. And now, because we're running short on time, this is going to be our final question of the forum. And will also be your last opportunity to speak to the audience. So if you have any closing thoughts, try to fold that into your 2 minutes as well if you can. And this final question is, if elected to the village board, what will be your philosophy with regard to tax incremental financing or tax incremental districts, commonly known as TIFs or TIDs? And with this one, we will start with Phil Willems and go down the row like we did before. So Phil Willems.
Okay, I don't
Can use the,
I'm sorry. I don't agree with all of them we have. In fact, I was the only no vote on one of our previous ones. I did really like the very first one we had when the village bought some land so that we could start a business park. I really liked the second one, which was the addition to the business park. And the next addition to the business park, while a little long, was still not bad. I wasn't totally in favor of the one along Q because there were houses put in it, and I couldn't reconcile myself with that. I'm beginning to have more and more issues with the one that concerns the grocery stores, and I don't care if we get one more grocery store, two more grocery stores, or three more grocery stores. I'm saddened by the fact that people think our Piggly Wiggly isn't competitive. It is fine with me. They're very generous people. They run a great store. However, I will support a TIF if it helps the village. I'm not going to support a TIF if it helps just a business gain a cheap advantage. I'd be happy if they never happened. But they're here, and they're a tool. If we want to get a guy to make widgets, and widgets are very popular, and he comes to us and say, what can you do? And we'll say, well, we got some land here. You can buy it for $100,000 and put up your building, and we'll tax you at X rate. He'll say, well, if I go over to Sun Prairie, they'll give me the land. You want me here or not? Well, then we have to wrestle with that. And we have said, no, we don't want you. We have said, yes, we do want you. So it's not easy to say you're in favor of one TIF or another TIF.
And Phil,
you're
thanks
right, they're okay. Stop.
Yes, thanks. Before we move on to the next question, I want to remind the other candidates, Frank Bergman, Jack Heineman, and James Manguth, and Judith Engbertson, if she has arrived, that we are going to take your statements immediately following the forum. So you are now on deck, so be ready to go as soon as we wrap up with this question here. So the next answer on the TIF question, Mary Heimbecker.
I would like to see very many less TIFs in Waunakee. We're supposed to be this wonderful community that everybody wants to come to, but the developers seem to think that they need millions of dollars in TIFs to come here. We have a fantastic school district. We should sell that as such. Say, you want to come here? Use our school district as leverage for you to develop here. We have a wonderful community, and there are also other options for infrastructure, grants. Can we fund them up front, and then the money from any development would automatically come in and go to our district's revenues for schools, MATC, fire, EMS, police all of those instead of having them tied up for, some of the longest ones we have here in town are 27 years. So for 27 years, that revenue does not come into the village revenues. Thank you.
Now, Gary Herzberg.
Yes, TIFs are a very contentious item in the village of Waunakee, at least according to the paper. I know that the village board has always been a difficult struggle every time they come in. We have to look at the infrastructure requirements we have. We have to look at the needs of the business and maybe the employment that it brings to the community. You try to weigh that when you're on the village board. We bring in, consultants who specialize in this. The most highly regarded, probably regarded consultant in the state. And we have to use, their but-for test methodology to prove that this TIF is going to pay off. From there, it goes to the schools, it goes to MATC, they review it. They need to agree that, yes, we agree this makes sense to do. I think if you look at the paper today, TIFs are something that maybe in the state will change. But when you're in a community and you're competing for jobs, employment, you look at people like Renew Air. They're a great employer in this community. And you have to understand that everyone uses this tool that you compete against. And if you want jobs and you want some infrastructure paid for that helps the community, TIF is the tool today that we have to utilize. I think going forward, we'll probably look at things a little differently. But again, I just believe there's some positive things that TIF provide the community, especially from employment and helping us with infrastructure we need to make ourselves a better community.
Ann Lewandowski.
I'm deeply skeptical of TIDs because as we expand the village's base, even if we base and use future revenue, that leaves a slice of the pie that everybody else needs to make up. In addition, I've certainly had experiences with businesses that have said, TIDs are great because we can just ask for them, and even if people are so scared that we'll go somewhere else, that they'll give it to us, and that but-for meaning test is not exactly the most meaningful because it's the same size development in the same time frame at this moment. And really, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense because that just creates a fear of missing out. In addition, I'm very concerned by how open these TIF agreements are. I have never seen a full agreement. The project plan, yes, but the actual agreement is very difficult to come by. For instance, in the Kilkenny TID, there's a $1.2 million barn project listed on the project plan that I don't know what that is as a new resident, and I'm concerned about that. So the real question is, how do you get economic development, and how do you do this without using TIDs? And what we heard from our experts at the UW-Madison was you can purchase that land and you can lease it to somebody and have some requirements. We heard you need to incentivize development or subsidize them in a certain way in order to have that leverage. TIDs are that leverage. We need a clear policy about when we will consider TIDs and when we will not. We also need to know that this is the situation, and so it doesn't look like we're favoring one person over another. Clear policy makes that very easy. Thank you.
Now, Robert McPherson.
So I made it very clear that as soon as I got my campaign materials out there that I am not in favor of mixed-use residential tax incremental financing districts. The honest answer is because there is residential demand in Waunakee. You want to put a business into Waunakee and you want to get a tax break, that's something that's worth discussing because businesses bring jobs, bring net positives to the village. However, why do we have to tack on the residential part of that? Well, we tack on the residential part, okay. Where are the questions from the municipal government asking how many of these units are going to be affordable? Or what's the average rents going to be on this, or cost if they're condos? These are not questions that we're asking. So we create this public perception that TIFs then just become a corporate handout to developers that want to come into the village. And that's a failure on the part of the village government. The reality is that we can alter, and actually, if elected, I would work towards altering our TID policy so that we can become, if you're going to put in residential, that should be one of the mandatory questions that we're asking. How many of these units are going to be affordable, and how will this benefit the village as far as affordability and housing goes? We've had some residential-related TIFs over the years. I'm not going to name specific ones, but it did remove some housing that was aimed at lower-income individuals, and it put it in with houses that they openly stated they probably could not afford to live in after they rebuilt them with the new housing. So if we have situations like that, is that really benefiting the village? Is that really worth taxpayer money? You're literally telling people their tax money that they're paying to live here now is going to pay to get them out of the village because they can no longer afford to live here. That is a situation that we must avoid when we have TIFs, and that's why we have to change the policy and why I would change the policy.
And Susan Springman.
So how you use TIF is governed by state statute, and we follow that statute. Do I like TIF? No, I don't like it because it creates all sorts of controversy. Most people don't understand it. And if I could change it, I would. We are in a competitive economic environment in Dane County, and we have to consider it as a tool at times. We do not give everybody who asks for TIF. Many discussions never even reach the village board. Somebody comes in and talks to staff and they just say, nah, that is not going to work. But, so not everybody gets it, nor have they. One thing I'm very proud of is that people in Waunakee, their property taxes are at 1/3, the bottom 1/3 of property taxes paid in Dane County. So our property tax base is very healthy, and I don't think people are hurting here because of TIF. We actually, in many ways, have gotten public improvements paid for that would have to have gone on the property tax rolls. We have many roadway systems that have been built. We have a water utility. We have land that went to a hockey rink. We have land that went to the senior center and the community center. Environmental cleanup that has happened. Main Street would not have happened. Roadway extensions for the Legion property, stormwater ponds for the downtown. We contributed to the Main Street project. Many things like that. So public improvements and infrastructure would have to have been paid for through your property tax if we did not have this increment. So it can also do good things. Could we have done some things differently? Hindsight, it's always 20/20. You can look back and go, well, I wish we'd done it this way. And we're not all experts on the board. We have to listen to staff and our consultants as well, but through our experience, I think we will fine-tune it. Affordable housing is one thing, or workforce housing I'd like to see it used for, and I think there definitely is that capability.
Thank you. And what we're going to do now, that concludes the village board section of the forum, but we're not quite done yet. We are going to have 2-minute statements from candidates for other offices, starting with village president. And first up, we did invite both candidates. Chris Ellner is not able to attend, but Frank Bergman is. And Frank Bergman, you will get 2 minutes at the podium. You can just hang around for a minute if you wouldn't mind. Oh. Yeah, it'd be less disruptive, actually. It's going to be quick.
Then I won't start eating my cookies.
Want me to stand over here? Okay. All right. You ready?
Ready?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Can we borrow your mic? Sorry.
I won't need a mic.
No, you need it for the, yeah.
Play on there, okay?
Yeah. Maybe you can stand in front of the podium now.
All right, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Frank Bergman, and I am the write-in candidate for the presidency. So you've heard the fluff. Now I'll give you the realities. We need to elect 3 new faces with strong voices in this village, or we're going nowhere. Round and round and round. We need a full-time presidency who can take control and can maintain at arm's length the influential groups that are controlling this village. That's the truth of it. We need to redirect, I will redirect the studies from talk, endless talk, to action. Whether they like it or not, I will put the pressure on the board. These trustees will deliver, or they will find another job. That's what you do when you're village president. You can't be friends with anyone. I have to represent the village. I am the village. That's the way it is when you supervise. I want to have the newspaper print out in the paper Statute 61.34, paragraph 3, powers of the village board. It's amazing. We can take land, buy land, we can't condemn. The village board and the presidency, we can buy the land. Teachers, we can build some beautiful condos for them. We can rent it to them. We can sell it to them. We can have all we want for our teachers at any given cost we want to prepare. We can build, believe it or not, it's right in the statutes. We can build, own, manage, and we can sell. We need stronger zoning for our past buildings and our heritage. We're ready to tear down the whole 2nd Street.
Your time is up. Thank you for your statement. And next up, Jack Heineman on the ballot for, let's move this up in that way. Jack Heineman, he is on the ballot representing a Village of Waunakee spot on the Waunakee School Board. Jack, you have 2 minutes beginning now.
Thank you, Tim, and the GROW organization for pulling this event together this afternoon. I think it's very important for people to speak out, and it's important for you as voters to be as informed as possible. As Tim indicated, I'm Jack Heineman, running for school board. I moved to Waunakee in 2007 with my lovely wife and 4 children. My wife is, her family has been in around the Waunakee area. As a matter of fact, my wife's great-grandmother graduated from Waunakee High School in 1912 as the valedictorian, and my daughter graduated in 2012. 100 years later. So I've got 4 daughters. All of them are pursuing engineering degrees. They all Waunakee did a great job for them and our family. I'm passionate about education. My parents were both teachers. And, you know, as we go forward, areas of interest, I'm very interested in the facilities. I sit on the facilities committee, the budget committee, and the co-curricular committee. And we are going to have to look at the next referendums, which would be the middle school, elementary, and a facilities maintenance referendum. I'm very interested in mental health. You know, as a matter of fact, this afternoon, CBS put out a story on how mental health issues are growing within our young people. So we've got to really take a look at that. The opioid crisis is really hitting us, and I think just as closing,
and your time's up.
My time is up.
Sorry. We're restricted about that. Dave Beckshire, you have 2 minutes. Come on up to the podium. And Dave Beckshire is also on the ballot, and he is running to represent the Village of Waunakee on the school board. There are 2 seats open for that spot, and there are 2 candidates on the ballot as well as a write-in candidate. Dave Beckshire, 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Dave Betcher. I've been on the Waunakee School Board for 6 years. My background is I'm a construction electrician. I've built a lot of schools from the Verona High School before the new one. I've worked on, as an electrician, 3 of the schools here in Waunakee, and I've done almost every single Madison school remodel of one type or another. And that's the biggest reason I got on the Waunakee School Board. I've seen school boards spend money, do referendums, and do construction projects, but unfortunately, quite often, they're not really what they needed. So During the last referendum, there was an open seat. I was asked by some friends that I should get on the school board to bring that expertise to the school district to try to help them. The biggest part of a school board is about setting policies, doing staff, pay raises, retention. But the biggest part for each individual member of a school board is what part do they bring that helps that school district. The thing I bring is my construction experience. Plus, I was a part-time teacher at MATC, president of a teachers union, so I know what it is to be on the other side of that negotiating and what it takes to convince teachers to stay. And that's going to be a big part of what's happening in Waunakee. But when we get into building and designing our new schools, it's about trying to do it in the best, most affordable way possible. My experience with the state of Wisconsin as a lobbyist for years for the electricians union is I learned how you can save a lot of money by using the state resources. For example, Waunakee is now one of the few school districts that's using the state contract in order to do our hiring for our contractors, and by doing that, we get the same rate that UW does, which helps us use large volume and bring that in. We could do the same thing now with solar. We have large buildings that could put solar on them, and then we can make money off of our school buildings. And I can help get those contracts in place because I've done that with the city of Monona and Middleton and through the electricians union. So hopefully we can do that as we go into our next phase, because the biggest part of a school district is always balancing the budget.
Thank you. And next up, also running for school board, this is for the seat where no one is on the ballot. It's going to be filled by a write-in, the Dane Springfield representative. First up, James Mainguth. He has 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jim Mainguth. Excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat this afternoon, but my background is I've been here my entire life. Grew up here, graduating in 1984. Some of my past teachers are actually on the school board. I think they do a great job. I just want to keep that going. I got to a point in time in my life now I feel I should give something back. The school's been great to me, great to my boys. I had one graduate in 2017. I got one who's still a junior right now. Like I said, I'd kind of like to give something back. And that's why I been involved with stuff in the school in the past, mostly of the youth coaching, baseball, basketball, football, and such like that. My background is construction. I was in that for about 25 years before the boom hit, or the bubble busted. So I'm interested in the facilities that we've got and how we take care of them. It's like a car. You buy a car, you take care of it, you keep it running. I'd like to see that do that with our schools. I'd like to keep the retention of our great teachers that we have. Excuse me. It's time that, I guess I give something back to the school district that's given something to me. Really don't have much else to say. Wasn't too prepared, so thank you.
Thank you. And now Judith Engbretson, is she here?
She's here.
Okay, so you have 2 minutes. Judith Engbretson is the other write-in candidate. Like I said, there is no candidate on the ballot for this particular spot, so it will be filled by a write-in candidate. And Judith, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I came here in 1991 with my husband, who took over as pastor of Peace Lutheran Church. We came with our 2 daughters. I had one daughter graduate here from Waunakee High School. I've been in education for the last 30 years. My last 15 years were spent at West High School in Madison as a teacher, department chairperson, and then as an assistant principal for 2 years. I've gotten to know the community well, and I think the school board is doing a fine job. We rank high as a school system here, and I want to continue that. And so I just thought, I've been retired for a few years now, and I thought this was a chance for me to give back and serve on this board, which I again think is doing a fabulous job. So thank you.
Okay. Before we wrap up, has everyone who's running for anything had a chance to get their 2 minutes? And does anyone want to declare a write-in candidacy right now? Okay. Are you really declaring a write-in candidacy? No. Okay, this is not announcement time. This is only if you're a candidate. Okay. So with that, I just want to say how tremendously proud I am for everyone here running for office, putting yourself out there. I just feel so good about democracy in Waunakee. Whatever the problems may or may not be at the federal level, state level, I just think it's tremendous what we have going on in this community. So many people wanting to be involved. This is really one of the things that shows me what just a tremendous community we have here in Waunakee. And I will ask you to, one more time, applaud for everyone equally, because and with that, we are wrapped. Is there something? Yes. There's not announcements.
No, but
okay.
After this, there will be a meet and greet. Any of the candidates that would like to stay for more questions, you're welcome to do so.
Right, it won't be on the video, of course, but we're going to end the video now, but anyone who wants to stick around, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you about their candidacy. So thank you.